Welcome to another fantastic episode of My Orgasmic Life. I'm your hostess, Gaia Morrissette. Okay, so let's get a bunch of housekeeping stuff taken care of. So first off, I am live in the dungeon. So if you are listening and you're like, oh, I need to see what Gaia is wearing because I'm all dressed up, looking all hot, and you want to see like the wall of implements behind me, go check out the video on my YouTube channel under Gaia Morrissette or on my Patreon, which the link will be in the show notes. Okay. So a bunch of new changes. So before we get into our topic about switches, the struggles with switches in the world of BDSM, another couple of housekeeping things I want to talk about. So this will be the last filming of My Orgasmic Life live for the podcast. I've listened to my podcast audience. They have requested that they get my undivided attention and I do pre-recorded episodes so that I am not distracted by my wonderful live audience that ask me lots of questions and say wonderful things about me that gets me distracted. So this will be the last. This won't be the last My Orgasmic Life episode. This will just be the last live recording of it live. Now, there's a bunch of different ways. If you're like, ooh, I don't want to miss out. I don't want to miss out. Please, how do I not miss out? So you can join my Instagram feed, my new Instagram feed. Like My Orgasmic Life is growing up. It's now has its own social media presence. So you can find it on My Orgasmic Life Podcast is my new Instagram handle. As well as if you've been following me on Facebook and you've really enjoyed all the Facebook experiences with me, then I have started a specific group called My Orgasmic Life Podcast Facebook group that you can join, where you can make comments about episodes that you've enjoyed, feedback. It's an exciting way to interact with me and interact with others who enjoy My Orgasmic Life. So you can check that out. And the videos, all the episodes will be posted. Links will be posted in My Orgasmic Life My Orgasmic Life Podcast Facebook group. Okay. So for everybody who's like, oh my God, what's happening? I don't understand. All my Facebook people, this is what's going on. Okay. And we're going to be doing a lot of new stuff with My Orgasmic Life. We're going to have like different formats and we're going to try out different formats and see which ones that you guys as the audience really, really love. So, I'm excited. I'm excited to show up for you guys. And I'm really, really excited to hear your thoughts and your ideas and your feedbacks and your comments that are related. This is very important. Okay. This is not a sex invitation or an invitation to send me penis pictures. Okay. So, or to hit on me. Again, I'm not available for marriage, having anybody's babies, sex, or dating. I am here in a professional capacity. All right. How do you engage with me professionally? You can reach me at GaiaMorrissette.com. Okay, let's get into our, one last thing. I have to say, I love my audience. I just want to give some audience love for a second here. Thank you for all the years. So I've been doing My Orgasmic Life podcast for 2.5 years now, and I have over 190 episodes. I think this is 191 or 192. And I wouldn't be here without my beautiful audience. So thank you. I appreciate you. I am, up in my game because you've asked me to, and I can't wait for us to grow and go on this adventure and continue to grow and go on this adventure of exploration and awakening and self-acceptance together. Mwah. Okay, so enough love. Let's get into some kinky shit. So today I want to talk to you about switches. And what is a switch, and what are the struggles that switches have in the realm of BDSM and kink? So if you're like, well, she keeps saying BDSM. What is BDSM? If you're like, you're not really familiar with some of the lingo and you're not familiar, I did a fantastic episode 47. Go check it out. It talks about all the lingo, what everything means, so that you'll be able to, be in the know. Okay. So for the purpose of today's episode, I'm going to quickly define a switch. So switches are people that can play different power exchange roles. They don't just identify as one power exchange role. And when I say power exchange role, I mean dominant, submissive, top or bottom. So switches can and do and desire, and in some ways even need, depending on their level of experience, their level of need and balance in the world of kink and BDSM. So it may be a need to be able to be on both sides of the spectrum. And so just like bisexuality, though, I need to put a caveat here. So often people assume that if you're bi, that you equally are attracted to both genders. And if you're pan, you're equally attracted to all genders, identities. And that's not true. It's a spectrum. And so how much you desire and what level you desire and how often you desire to different genders is the same in the world of switches. Just because you are a switch doesn't mean you are an equal switch, does not mean that you are equally desire to be submissive as you desire to be dominant. There is a spectrum. And it's really, really important that we start to honor that, because often I hear and see in the community, the BDSM community, that there's a whole bunch of weird, disrespectful experiences for switches. And so I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about in the community, some of the things that I have run into and experienced and heard of. So first of all, I've heard the argument, unfortunately, more than once and for over years of experiences, where in the BDSM community that there's people that don't even acknowledge that there's such thing as a switch. So let's just put that to rest. There are lots of switches. I would identify as a switch. So that's number one. Number two, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, by the way, I've been sick. If you're like, Gaia seems off her game a little bit. That's because I've been sick for the last 2 weeks with a horrible stomach flu. So I may not be my normal, fabulous, brilliant self. Okay, so bear with me. But I show up because I love you. I even put some clothes on, put some makeup on because I love you. All right. So where was I? Oh, switches. So the second thing is that switches all desire that they're kind of sluts. Now, I reclaim and I am an ethical slut, but that has nothing to do with being a switch. Okay. So those are two different things. So there's this idea that if you're a switch, you equally crave both being dominant and submissive. That's not true. Just like I talked a moment ago about bisexuality and pansexuality, it's a spectrum of where you fall in on that spectrum. One end of the spectrum is dominance, the other end of the spectrum is submission. And there's all these variables of what that looks like in between. Okay. So I'm going to identify, how do I identify on the scale, on this, the switch spectrum. And so identify as, like, if you were to ask me, what am I would probably not tell you I was a switch. And the reason I wouldn't tell you I was a switch is because I wouldn't want to have this conversation. Because in the community, often, again, there's this assumption that that means that if I'm a switch and I happen to be showing up as a dom, and some other dom can come along, and then that I will be submissive, which is not true at all. So this is how I identify, as I would say 99.9% dominant. I'm all about consensual world domination, and me being at the top of the food chain. Except for one person that is my master, or as I like to call him, my overlord. World domination needs one overlord. And that is the only person on the planet that I would surrender to. And I love surrendering. And then actually, in reality, when I'm not working and teaching and facilitating and doming and doing all the things that I do in the world, I am submissive. I am master's pet. So even though I would say I'm 99.9% dominant, that 1% of me that's submissive has created a life where I actually spend quite a bit of time being submissive, because for me, I need that balance in my life. I am a better dom because I surrender. I'm a better dom because I know what my submissives experience. I'm a better dom because of it. So that's the second thing that, I feel that switches struggle with in the BDSM community, is like owning, like, I'm a switch. So the next question should be, is like, when we identify as I'm a switch, and the person who's in front of you, instead of jumping to a conclusion of what that means, is to ask, and what does that mean for you? How does that show up for you? The third thing that's really, really important, okay, you ready? Is that just because somebody is kinky, just because somebody is into BDSM and somebody identifies as a switch, does not mean that they are available for you or that they're interested in engaging with you in the world of BDSM and kink. Or so it's really important that it's not a free for all. It doesn't mean that you're like open for business, and that is something that needs to be negotiated and talked about with each person. So when you happen to be, for newbies that are walking into the world of BDSM and kink and into the community, do not assume, if you happen to identify as a dom, do not assume that, first of all, anybody that you see in participating as a switch is available for you to treat them as a switch, because they have not consented to being your submissive. So you need to treat everybody as their equal. Even if you are dom, everybody is your equal, until you have conversations about how that behavior needs to happen. Okay, so that's a whole other episode on proper etiquette on how do we don't be an asshole dom, which will be another show. Okay, let's come back to switches. So here's the struggle that I see, both that I have struggled with internally, and I have talked to other switches that struggle with this, is that especially the switches that are majority dominant, this is the biggest struggle, is that being seen as less than, or being seen as weak, or being seen as being available to be taken advantage of. This comes back to that whole asshole dominance in the community that show up and are disrespectful. And there's that internal struggle of, well, if I'm really dominant, but yet I crave and desire to be in this beautiful space of submission, and whether I selectively choose who and when and how I'm going to drop into that submission space, that there's this internal struggle that if others see this, if others know this, if we talk about this in any capacity, that somehow it will minimize the power we hold, the strength we hold, the confidence we hold, the space that we hold as dominance. And that's not true. It's only true because society has made that true. It's only true because we've been silent about it. It's only true because we don't talk about it and we don't own it. And I saw that really clearly recently. I was facilitating a great group chat about kink and BDSM with a group of really powerful, amazing women. And one of the other beautiful dominants, started to talk as I was talking about, how I identify, as basically world domination with an overlord. That's my structure, my hierarchical structure in my life. and how that is really important for me to have balance. And, she had said, and this was really beautiful. She's like, that was so beautiful to hear, because that's how she identifies. And there opened up, there's like this beautiful conversation that started to open up, instead of us all like puffing out our chests, is what often happens when you get a bunch of, doms in a room, is that everybody's like trying to be top dog, instead of just being like, who are you and how can I hold space for you and how can I see you as who you are? We're not in competition. We don't need to, again, that will be in the asshole dom episode. Behavior. And so that's why I really wanted to have this conversation, is one, we need to stop doing that. And it's okay. And the third thing, and this is a struggle that I see that happens for a lot of females, people who identify as female, in identifying as female and identifying as a dominant female, the struggle of acknowledging that you're a switch, the acknowledging that you desire to be submissive, that sometimes you crave submission, sometimes you choose submission, is like that somehow that makes us weak, and that makes us bad, and that makes us wrong, and that makes us less of a powerful woman, and it makes us less than. And these are some of these internal struggles that we have. It's been deeply rooted and programmed and encoded in us since, in North America anyways, that you can't show any signs of weakness. And we still live in a culture, in a society that believes surrender and submission is a sign of weakness, which is not true at all. It's a sign of strength. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of strength, and a lot of bravery to say, I'm going to let go of control. I feel safe. I've created a life in my life that I feel safe enough. I've done enough healing. I've done enough work. I've created a wonderful, safe space in my life that I can now let go of control. I can hand the reins, in this case, the flogger or the riding crop, over to somebody who I have chosen, that I feel safe and trust enough to take lead, to take care. I can just let go. I can just not be in charge. I cannot have to make a decision. I don't have to be on. And choosing surrender and being able to drop into that place of submission is huge, powerful, and empowered, completely empowered. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I see and understand those internal struggles. I still struggle with them, even though I am an advocate, I'm an educator. I personally, crave and desire. And like I said, I have a master, I have my overlord that keeps me balanced. So I can show up and do world domination, and I can show up and be on in the world, and I can be the best, most powerful version of myself, because I get to have a break. And that's the most amazing. It's been a game changer for me, embracing that. So So I think these are the major issues that switches struggle with. Oh, actually, there's some fun ones. I know that often one of the struggles that I have is when I'm not while I'm doming, well, a little bit sometimes when I'm doming for a brief second. When, especially when I'm exploring something new with a submissive that I haven't experienced yet, it's like, ooh, there's a part of me, the part of me that's a submissive, that's like, ooh, I want to be in those chains. Ooh, that looks fun. I want to be able to do that. And so it's like that piece of like being in charge, and yet part of you also desires to not be in charge. And I know that that can be one of the struggles that I know that is kind of fun. I mean, it's a quick sort of like, woo. And the nice thing is, because I've embraced being a switch instead of like being in the closet about it and secret about it, and I've created somebody and spaces where I can explore, I can then make a mental note, and then I get to go and then go share that with my master and say, ooh, I'd really like to do this. Can we do this? Is this something that we can explore? I'd like to be on the receiving end of this. The other beautiful thing is that as I explore my own stuff, it also then helps me bring it to the table for my submissives, because I've just experienced this. So I'm like, oh, I totally get this. I don't just get it on an intellectual level and the psychology of it, but I get it on like a deep soul level of what that sensation and what's going on might be going on psychologically and emotionally deeply inside me. So yeah, there's the, ooh, I want to be the one. My turn, my turn, my turn. That's one of the struggles. I think the other thing that switches can struggle with, unless they create some, and it depends on the switch, really define relationships. So if you're in a power exchange relationship and you both are switches, then then the way you have to do it so that everybody gets their needs met is you got to create some really clear protocols. So one of the great protocols is deciding before you're having a play session, a kink BDSM session. And again, if you're like, ooh, all this language, I don't understand what she's talking about, go watch episode 47. I talk all about it. Okay. So you want to create clear protocols. And one of the best protocols is a collar. Here's my collar. So I know if I was playing now, like I said, I only submit to one person, my master. So if this collar is on, it's only for my master. And even if I was in an environment with other DOMs, I would only submit to my master. No other DOM would ever get to dominate me. Okay. So for me, it's very easy. But if I was in relationships where I was with another switch, and the both of us wanted to go back and forth, and that was something that we wanted to explore together, we would just have to make sure, okay, who's wearing the collar for this play session, which means that you have to stay in the submissive space, and who is doming, and make sure that they're doming for the whole session. It's not a good idea to switch back and forth during a play session, because it's in order for the submissive or the bottom in that experience to really able to drop into subspace, they need to fully surrender and let go of control. The only way you can do that is by letting go of control and surrendering and handing the riding crop over to somebody else. Okay. And the Dom needs to really drop into that space and hold that energy for that submissive, that bottom at that time, to be able to drop into subspace. Okay. So that's another struggle the switches have, is where it's like, oh, I'm the top, I'm dominant, no, I'm submissive. Oh, I want to be submissive today, but I want to be submissive today. No, I want to be dominant today. I want to be dominant today. So that's one of the struggles, that when you have two switches, it can be a problem. And it's also really important that in your relationships that you, again, define, when you're playing, you define what roles you're going to be, because a switch can switch roles and can switch roles. Some switches can switch roles very easily within the play scene. So you really want to make sure that you define what role a switch is playing. Are they leading the show, or are they surrendering? And it would be good to have a collar to represent that, or some kind of physical reminder so that they know what role to stay in during that whole entire play session. Okay, so I think that's it. I think those are all the things. Those are all the things around the switches. And again, if you're like, ooh, Gaia talked about a lot of like topics and language. She's like speaking a foreign language. I don't understand so many of the things that she's talking about. Please go watch episode and listen to episode 47 on My Orgasmic Life Podcast. So let's talk about My Orgasmic Life Podcast. Woo! So I think this is 192 episodes, which I'm very excited about. And it's been an exploration of all things sex and relationships and healing and love and my ethical, slutty, orgasmic life, the good, the bad, the messy. So it's quite the adventure. You got like 192 episodes of my life's adventure over the last 2.5 years. Definitely go check out. And you can find My Orgasmic Life podcast on all of the podcasting platforms. Google, Apple, Spotify. You can find it at tickle.life. You can find it on my website at Gaia Morrissette. You can find it everywhere. And if you really are excited and love, and here's some ways you can support me, okay? Because I know that you love and adore me just as I love and adore you guys. And so here's some ways that would be I invite you to support. You can join my Patreon, be a member of my Patreon, which is a beautiful way of getting extra content. There's different layers and levels where you get different ways and extra bonuses and content and interactions with me and around, for the show. You can, if you're like, ooh, I want to see Gaia more in the dungeon. Well, I have this great opportunity for you. It's called my BDSM membership program. It's very exciting. It's very hot. It's very sexy. You see me in action as a dominant, and sometimes you even see me as a submissive, actually. And what I do is every month I explore a new kink or fetish in the dungeon. And it used to be live streaming. Now it is pre-recorded. And this month's episode was on my human puppy, which is very exciting. So if you're like, what's a human puppy? I did a pot at last week's episode, was on human puppy play. So you can go listen to that episode and you're like, ooh, now I want to see what it actually looks like in action. Go join my BDSM membership program, which you can find at empressgaia.com. And let's see. Oh, another way to really support is to share My Orgasmic Life with your people. And I know that, sometimes we don't really want everybody to know. I'm kind of like a dirty little secret. So I get that you may not want to share, but if you have some close friends that you're like, oh, would really enjoy, or lovers or partners, please introduce them to My Orgasmic Life Podcast. You can also go do reviews on Apple podcast. That's helpful and helps the search. So making reviews and comments, that helps more people in the world find My Orgasmic Life. So help me make the world a sexier, safer, and more orgasmic place for us all. I love yous. Thanks for being with me. And I can't wait till my next episode next week. Who knows what I'll talk about? I think I might talk about asshole doms. Topic next week. Who knows? We'll see. All right. Mwah. You can again find me at all things Gaia Morrissette. All things to find me. The entry point is at www.gaiamorrissette.com. All of the details for all the things I just talked about will be in the show notes, so you don't have to remember. And have a juicy day, and may it be filled with exploration, self-acceptance, and hopefully some orgasmic pleasure. Mwah. Till next time.